Hey gang, I'm going to jump, we have an action-packed session today, so I'm going to jump right into it. I actually have my slides a little bit out of order. I'm Anna. I run a company called TMG Media. We are a technology consulting company. What does that mean? I sometimes joke that my typical project, which is a big technology rollout, a platform rollout, involves 11 vendors in 5 time zones. So that's who I am. I also wrote this book, which is available up here. Everything I'm about to say today is in my book. It's half price because frankly, I don't want to make change. 20 bucks. I have a reader who is now a client who said he kept it by his bedside, which is both flattering and creepy, sort of in equal measure. So obviously we're here to talk about the myths in DX platform acquisition. Really what we're talking about is technology choice and the first third of a project, which are those business decisions and discovery involved in technology choice. Why is that first third so important? The reason is by the time a programmer has his keys on the keyboard, your fate is sealed. So paying attention to that first third is absolutely key for the success of your technology project, your platform rollout. Okay, first myth, that you can reach consensus in your technology choice. People have this idea in their minds, they're going to get all the right people in the meeting room, they're going to get the techies in the meeting room, and everybody is going to assess the information and they're going to come to the right choice about their technology acquisition. Well, here's what technology choice discussions really look like. Frankly, that's way too soon for me, so this is better. Crusades, blood on the floor. I call it the religious war stage of a technology project. Because I don't know why that technology inspires so much passion and conflict in individuals. The truth is that it does. You can prove it to yourself at Thanksgiving dinner, just throw out a proposition. Android versus iPhone. And by the end of the evening, people won't be speaking to one another. So I don't know why. Ask a psychologist. I do know the what. This happens all the time. So what we're going to talk about are some ways to diagnose it, to spot it when it's happening, and some ways to get out of it. The best technology advice I was ever given was actually not technology advice. Someone said to me, hey, listen, you can be right or you can be married. Pick one. And oftentimes people in the room go and they're remembering the conflict from last night. The reason why this is such a great piece of technology advice is twofold. One, like a marriage, you are going to need to stay in a relationship with the people in your company, the people doing this platform rollout, for a very long time. And honestly, the collegiality and the community between you is far more important than any technology you pick. So choosing right over that phenomenon is the wrong way to go about it. The second aspect of this, you can be right or you can be married, technology advice, comes down to discussion of the word right. We're rolling out technology here. We're not trying to figure out which antibiotic works better. If we were trying to figure out which antibiotic works better, we'd have a group of people over here, they'd take one, we've had a group of people over here, they'd take the other, and one group would be less sick than the other, right? We'd know which one was the right choice. In technology, you cannot run the control. You can't roll out your website on WordPress over here and on Sitecore over here and say go and then watch and see which one was more effective, took less time and less money. You cannot run the control. Therefore, by definition, there is no right answer. You're just going to have to get to the best answer your business people can get to in the time that you have. So right really leads you astray. If we have time at the end, I'll talk to you about the fun shamans and empire builders, a couple of fun techies. But I timed this thing, and we only have half hour. There's a keynote later. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about case study. A client of mine called me up in that stage. The board of directors, they could not get to technology choice because they were all at each other's throats. And so I was called in to sort of help with this situation. The reason that this was happening was that there was an influential cadre of technology people. The head tech guy in the organization, his title wasn't CEO, and this is a big media company whose name you would all recognize. So the lead tech guy was absolutely devoted to the idea of a hot new technology. It was a full platform redo, and this hot new technology at the core of the redo. Well, the problem with this is that technology was quite new and had never been rolled out at that scale before, nor with the level of integrations and the kind of integrations that would be required. So a number of people in the organization were throwing up red flags about this. It was actually quite difficult to find vendors, except ones that you kind of knew they were lying anyway. So ultimately, the business gave in to this very strong technology voice. And there was a reason for this. This guy, he was a sweetie pie. He was beloved in the business. He'd gotten them through a lot of technology issues. He was a really nice guy. So what happened? Every single red flag, as you can imagine, I don't need to tell you the story, every red flag that everyone identified came up and more. The project was late and it took too much time and cost too much money. But guess what? Our hero, the lead tech, and his team were gone within 6 months of the project launching. All of them had jumped ship. Why? Because they had another agenda, which wasn't necessarily the best project for the least amount of cost and least time. Technology folks want to do interesting things, and they want to improve their career prospects. So here's the rule. Technologists recommend, the business gets to decide. If you had a brain tumor, God forbid, who would get to decide on your course of treatment? The neurologist or you? You. Why? Because it's your head, right? Now, as with marriage, it takes two to tango. So what we had with our hero here, who left after 6 weeks, is a technologist overreaching his business decision boundaries. He was driving the business decision. Two to tango, right? What was the business doing? Too scared. Shirking. So the phenomenon is technologists overreach and business stakeholders shirk. And when you have that dynamic, you're never going to get to a good decision. So the business people need to step up and own the decision no matter how ill-equipped that you feel. You don't understand neurology and neurosurgery, but I bet you if you had something going on in your head, you would. So the rule is techies, even the CIO, technology people recommend the business must decide. Myth number 2, off-the-shelf software saves time and money. By the way, guys, there's a parallel phenomenon here, which is the one tool for the job phenomenon. You could insert that phrase for this phrase. I just had to pick one. I only get 5 minutes. Okay, so off-the-shelf software saves time and money. I'm going to start with 2 case studies. One, again, another very large media and publication company whose name you would recognize chose an integrated platform for all the reasons that we could discuss. It just seems like it was going to be a better idea. And way down, this was a 3-year rollout. ERP, WCMS, ECM, DAM, the whole shot, the whole thing. Way down the line, 2/3 through the project, it was discovered that the e-commerce piece simply was not going to be able to meet the business's needs for a number of reasons. And part of the reason was that e-commerce thing had been bolted on, as so often happens with product companies. There had been an acquisition to be able to address e-commerce needs, and the e-commerce thing had been bolted on to this thing. So at a late stage of the project, the whole e-commerce piece had to be custom developed. Next case study, current case study. In fact, the fellow who said he was keeping my book on his books and his nightstand called me up. This is a large customer experience database thing. He's a very, very niche-y business. And he's a leader in his business because he has a kind of secret sauce. And he had gone quite far down the line in an off-the-shelf package before pulling back because the vendor ultimately could not meet the needs that his business had. And it wasn't, businesses a lot of times are stubborn. I'm not going to change my business processes. Well, in this case, it was a secret sauce. So there's bad behavior again here on both sides of the coin. First of all, on the vendor side of the coin, there's a lot of yeah. Does it do that? But I need it to, yeah, it does. Well, what if it, yeah, it does that too. So the salespeople are lazy. And the next thing is the business is a little lazy. I know this should work. We all know intuitively that this should work. So why, time and time again, is it not the case that off-the-shelf software ends up being less expensive? And why is it so frequent that customers get down the line and they discover, oh, yeah, no, it doesn't do that, and you're going to have to customize that, and it's going to cost Y, and then, by the way, you're going to be off the upgrade path, so when version 7.4.14 comes out, you're going to have to redo that customization because it's going to break when the system gets upgraded, right? That's what happens. Why does this happen? Because counterintuitively, when you're purchasing off-the-shelf software, you need to do as much or more discovery than you would do if you were doing custom. I know it seems counterintuitive, but the truth is when you're midway through the project, if you've chosen a custom route, you're actually more nimble. You can spin on a dime, you can change it. But in these cases, often there's a sunk cost bias. You get to the middle of the project, you realize you have to customize something, and it's too late to roll back. So more discovery, and by the way, words are useless. Business requirements documents like this, nobody reads them. The business requirements have to be visual, wireframes, click-throughs. Now, I get that vendors may not be willing to engage with you in that level of discovery. Discovery sucks, let's all admit it. It's hard work. And your vendor may not be willing to do that without being paid. Well, truth is you have to pay for discovery one way or the other, and it's cheaper to pay for it up front. Okay, next myth. For best results, plan on an internal implementation team. Honestly, team, I could have written this one both ways because this pendulum over the course of 20 years of software, it's better for an external team, it's better for an internal team. But right now, the winds of change are blowing in favor of internal teams. Here's the thing. A lot of times this decision is made in a bean counting way, which means that you're just doing, I don't know, the agency said they were going to cost this much, and then, but if we hired for that, it would be this, and then the health benefits, and the blah, blah, blah. So it's a bean counting choice, which misses a fundamental truth, and that is there are two types of technology people out there in the universe. There are your project types, and there are your steady state types. And they don't cross over, and you have to hire for one or the other. The project types, as you would imagine, are people who are very experienced in rolling out projects. They love the thrill of it. They love the being up to 1 in the morning at the project launch phase, the pressure. They're good with it. They like to do it. And they're very skilled at it because they've had the experience again and again. Usually you find these people at agencies, but more about that in a minute. And then you have your steady state types. These are more what you would call your product manager type, somebody who wants to be in charge of a software system, improve it, roll out, really take ownership and know a system. Well, you have to hire for one or the other. There's very little crossover in these two types. A lot of times, I've hired, I can't tell you how many tech teams I've hired on my own behalf and behalf of customers. A lot of times you find that people who are steady state types who are not honest with themselves because there's this fantasy of Silicon Valley and I want to do projects, and then they try to do it and they flame out. They're not equipped to handle it. They don't like it. They think they might like it and then they don't. Project people, the same thing. You put them in a steady state job and 2 months later they're out of there. So you have to hire for that. So here's what you need to look at. Put the bean counting aside for a minute. Are you a kind of a company where this, again, we're talking about platform rollout. Where this platform rollout is going to be the biggest project you're going to do for the next 3 years. Like this happens once every 3 years in your organization. If that's true, I would argue you get an external vendor who's good at rolling out projects, and then at the appropriate point you transition to a steady state team. If, on the other hand, you are in a company where there's a lot going on, where there's a lot of projects going on, you have a choice. You can either make a relationship with a vendor who's got project people all the time, or you can hire an internal team. But it's the steady state types versus the project types which is key in the success of this, not that one is better or more cost effective than another. All right, myth number 4. Good, I'm on time. There's a lot packed into myth number 4 here because it is on budgeting. I said budgeting, yes I did. All right, accurate budgeting is impossible. The truth is you can know the accuracy of your budget. And I'm going to talk about 3 different things that are going to give you perspective on this and allow you to do it with much, much greater accuracy. We're going to talk about the 4 budgeting methods, 5 always risky elements, and then the 3 metaphors. So, the budgeting methods. There's comparative budgeting, there's bottom-up budgeting, there's top-down budgeting, and there's blends. All right, comparative budgeting. That is what it sounds like. Somebody has done, either you're talking to a vendor, and somebody has done a project recently of the same size with the same technology that has the features you want. You're a consumer packaged goods company, you look over at your Dole, you look over there, there's, I don't know, Chiquita, no, whatever. And I like their consumer website. It was done in Sitecore, great, sign me up. Who was the vendor? Great, sign me up for that too. That's comparative budgeting. The vendor will be able to say, yep, that costs blah-de-blah, yours is different in XYZ way, and so it's going to cost you Q. Bottom-up budgeting, for those of you familiar with this term, is classic waterfall budgeting, where you do really in-depth business discovery up front. You've got a spreadsheet that scrolls to Spain. It's got 500 rows, and every feature is outlined in detail, what it's going to do. So the programmer takes that and goes, bottom-up budgeting. Top-down budgeting is clearly the opposite of that. And that's where you, because it typically happens in a project where there's a lot of innovation, right? Where there is no comparison. Nobody's done it before. It's difficult or impossible or impractical to come up with a feature list. It's the big idea stuff. And here's what this sounds like when you're talking to a senior, sophisticated programmer about this. You know, Anna, I get what they're asking for. I get it. And you know, it's kind of like the complexity of Project Q we did last year. It's got that feeling to it. It's about that size. And there's A and there's B and there's C, but that's what we're talking about. And I'm not talking about some amateur here. I'm talking about somebody with 30 years programming experience. That's what the conversation sounds like. So you're more conceptually sizing it. And blends is obviously a project. Many projects have many of these. Well, here's the secret. Comparative and bottom-up are the most accurate form of budgeting. Top-down is clearly the least accurate form of budgeting. That, by the way, you have to do comparative and bottom. You can't just be like, oh yeah, it's like that. That's not comparative budgeting. You have to have a recently done project, the same technology, similar size, and similar feature set. That's the definition. If you're not doing that, you might as well throw it out the window. So, most companies are completely unconscious of this. Their budgeting is being done in a certain way, and they have no idea. They don't ask the vendor, comparative? Do you do this bottom up? They don't know. So you don't, by definition, know how accurate your budget is. Okay, risks drive cost into projects. Here are the 5 always risky things in software projects. Data migration, customization, integration, too large project, and unproven technology. Those are the 5 always risky things. Put them on an index card and put them on your desk. These will drive cost into your project. I assign 5 to 10% for each one of these as a contingency on projects, straight off the bat. Now, nobody is saying that these 5 things are bad or should be avoided at all cost. Integration drives the power of modern software. Again, businesses tend to be unconscious about these things. Oh yeah, and the programmers, they're the worst. They make it say, oh yeah, what we're going to do these 5 integrations. Ears up. Integrations are hard to program and difficult to debug. So make your choices cautiously and don't sign up for these things if they're not necessary. Question these things where they exist. So the question is, does that cover all of it? If I do all of that, I'll have an accurate budget. You know, as usual, you can't have a list of things and then get to nirvana. I have 3 metaphors that some of the customers that work for me have said that they've been absolutely the most helpful in their getting like their arms around the software project and their budget. Pile of snow. We're in Chicago. Thank goodness the weather is nice. But I think we can all imagine what it's going to be like in February. So it snowed overnight. You got a 200-foot long driveway, and the plow guy calls and says he can't come. What do you have to do? It's no mystery. You have to get out a shovel and dig. It's not fun, but the good news is there is a 100% chance you are going to succeed. You'll get it done. And a bottle of Advil later, you will feel better. Pile of snow. IKEA desk. We've all done it. You buy that puppy, you bring it home, and it's your weekend. It's got a bag full of little nuts and bolts and screws. It's got directions that don't even have words. The first thing you do is you try to match up the screws with the directions. That's the teeny screw. That's the not so teeny screw. That's the almost not so teeny screw. That's the small screw. You get it. This is what scientists and software developers call a complicated task. First task, shoveling snow, was laborious but simple. IKEA desk, complicated. You're going to put in the wrong screw. You're going to realize it wasn't the small screw that little guy in the directions meant. It was the almost quite so small screw, and you're going to have to take that thing out. You might get the timing wrong. You promise yourself this puppy will be together by Saturday afternoon. Sunday at 6, you're doing the last turn of the Allen wrench, right? But again, good news. 100% chance you are going to succeed. Heart surgery. Guy rolls into the operating room in cardiac arrest. Maybe he has his medical record, maybe he doesn't. The surgeon dealing with the situation, there might be 3 underlying medical conditions nobody knows about, even the patient. There is no guarantee this guy is going to get off the table, even if you have the most skilled heart surgeon in the world. Now here's the thing. Software projects, large technology projects, platform rollouts are usually a combination of these 3 things. And you have to understand how to spot them because they drive risk into your project and they drive cost into your project. And another secret, software programmers make that thing sound easy. And they make piles of snow sound like the worst thing in the world. You mean Greg is going to have to key in by hand 3,000 zip codes? 3,000 zip codes, key in by hand, pile of snow, right? Well, I'll just, watch out for that word, I'll just write a custom, stop, write a custom script, oh God. What have you done? You have traded a pile of snow exercise for a heart surgery because your technology person made that thing sound awesome. And the pile of snow, how long would it have taken Greg to key in 3,000 zip codes? 2 weeks? There was a 100% chance he was going to do that. Now you're writing a custom script that hasn't even been done before. All right. Beware the optimistic programmer. I always say, optimism is not your friend in software development. When all else fails, trust your gut. Guts are sort of legendarily unreliable in software development projects. This is a graph I came up with. It's my interpretation of Gartner's hype cycle, if you're familiar with that thing. So let's talk about the blue line. I know this is not actually too visible for you, but I'll narrate through it. Let's talk about the blue line. The blue line is reality. You are in a normal software project, right? It's going to have some bumps in the road. It's largely going to meet its timeline and budget, maybe blown by a little bit that people can spot at the beginning. It's going to have some really difficult times in the middle, and you're going to have to make some trade-offs, but it's a normal software project. It started out fine, it pretty much went fine, and it ended mostly fine. That's reality. The orange line is the emotions of the business. Again, we're circling back to the beginning where I said technology inspires passion. The initial meetings around this platform rollout are absolutely euphoric. People are going to meetings and they're dreaming up their dreamy dreams about what the software is going to do and how it's going to transform the business, and there's going to be this feature. And to be fair, it's human nature. It's probably they've been in spreadsheets half their lives. It's probably the most exciting meeting they've had in a month or 6. And they're just dreaming along about what it's going to be. So the emotions are absolutely euphoric. And since most businesses, for very persuasive reasons, are doing waterfall-type software development at some level or another, you have this kind of dark side of the moon phenomenon where everybody stops having the meetings. They go away, program the thing, and they come back at the alpha stage, which is by definition kind of wonky and broken, and not everything works. Meanwhile, the business people didn't read the business requirements documents. We all know that. Or if they read it, they said, that can't possibly be what I call the butterfly stage, what they're like dreaming on. So they ignore them, right? So now the alpha stage comes. And the software is broken because it's an alpha. But also, people come crashing down to earth. That's all there is? Oh my Lord, this thing's a disaster. And then you start to have after-action reviews, and vendors are called on the carpet, and sometimes they're fired, and the whole thing is going on. This is all there is, and that's what it looks like, and that's how broken it is. This thing is a blessed disaster. So then, gradually, the business recovers, software developers make adjustments, a feature is resurrected because somebody thought it was a catastrophe. And you can see what I call, so that's the trough of FUD. Oh, I didn't define FUD. By the way, FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So at the alpha stage, the business goes into the trough of FUD, of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And then there's FUD recovery. They recover from their FUD, which is good, and that's all healthy and normal, and happens. Two things to be aware of. One, the problem is that if you look at the emotions of the business there and the emotions of the business there, you can easily conclude, which often happens, is that people end up disappointed and thinking that the software project was not a success, when this is what it was destined to be all along. So that's a problem. And the second hint that I'll give you is I actually often show people in large software rollouts this graph, because it has the effect of inoculating people against the trough of FUD. And I will say optimism is not your friend in software development. We just had a butterfly meeting. We just had a dreamy dream meeting. And secretly, you're all going to come crashing down to earth. I promise you, it's about, how long is this project? Oh, that would be in about 4.5 months. So keep your little trough of FUD graph in your memory. So in service of our wonderful conference organizers, I am ending on time. My book is available here again for $20 because I'm not going to make change, half off the cover price, or on Amazon. That's me. Questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have any advice on navigating that conversation between the business and the technologist when you're developing a requirements?
You know, the phrase that leapt to my mouth was don't be diplomatic. You know, I mean, the technology folks really resist it mightily. I mean, it's the same thing that neurosurgeon, you know, like, I mean, how the heck's that guy going to make the decision? He doesn't have a computer science degree. This is the nonsense you get from technology folks. And you really have to back them off that. They have to understand. They have to be taught the rule. You recommend. You don't get to decide. If they've been allowed to decide in the business, by the way, which is a phenomenon that you see quite frequently, it's tough. That's tough. It often takes a new sheriff in town. Yes, sir.
That often shifts into having the vendor recommend what they need and the client saying no, and then afterwards discovering that, oh yeah, that was it. That was exactly what we needed.
Yeah, I will admit that happens too. But you as a vendor, or if you are a vendor, you're not the business. You know, again, back to the neurology thing. I mean, if you needed to have that tumor removed and you didn't, you know, it's still your head. So, you know, you can't go, listen, I go into a lot of businesses like you do with, I don't know, I used to teach 9th grade, like you see other people's children and you just wish you could, it's not your kid. It's not your kid. It's not your head. They get to own it. Sir? Yeah, yes, there definitely is. Definitely is. I'll circle back to that, sir.
So there is a lot of education necessary, but an approach we recommend other people taking this risk. But if a client doesn't understand something that needs to be done, we sometimes defer the billing of that piece, saying, look, let us do it. If we were wrong, don't pay me, right? Because if you know you're right, take the risk.
There's a brave man. Did you have a follow-up about closing the education gap?
Yeah, I was just curious your perspective on how to kind of counter that.
You know, I honestly, it's part of the reason, I was working on a project years ago, and a young woman who reported to me, I was the contract CIO on this project, and a young woman who reported to me, you know, I have, as you can tell, I got a million of them. I got all these sayings and aphorisms, and 4 months in, and the marketing guy's going to freak out over there, or whatever. And she left the project. She's like, Hannah, did you write that down anywhere? Because I really need that for my next project. And so I did write it down. I tend to go in with this framework in place. Like, gang, first we're going to do education. And it's going to sound crazy. I'm going to talk to you about piles of snow and IKEA desks. And I go in an educational framework, and it's hilarious because, 6 months later, somebody's like, I think that was a pile of snow. Why did we just transform that to a heart surgery? That didn't make any sense. And the tech guy goes, yeah, I kind of did that. So you go in and with the framework of educating and making, and as you can tell, humor goes a long way. Like, get the techies to laugh at themselves. Yes, sir.
The opposite of that optimism is scary then?
Yeah, terrify the living bejesus out of them. I tell you this because they're starting. You have to understand they're starting off in euphoria. Guys, optimism is not your friend. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. People get it. People live. They live in their real world. I fell down the stairs today. People know that's going to happen. You're not telling them. You're not going to back them off of a technology project they need to do. Everybody needs to do it. And I tell them it's an inoculation. That's the other thing, which is, guys, this is an inoculation. Optimism is not your friend. Bring yourself down to earth. But yes, I do scare them because I recognize that they're starting out. They're on an opium high or something. Well, you've been a great audience. I'm delighted to have seen you today, and have a great keynote and a terrific cocktail hour.
The keynote is